I can see you are rearranged some things in the garage. What is going on in your life?
Yeah, it's a bit surprising. You can see that the picture is a bit different, but I've used the background of the original garage from.
Oh, I see. So
Yeah.
you moved the garage. Yeah, where are you located right now?
I'm in Germany, so I'm in European Union,
So
and yeah.
you moved the garage. You moved the garage to European Union. Yeah, that makes sense. So what is all people who are running startups are excited. Artem, what is our topic today?
As I traveled from United States to Europe, why not to talk about difference of these two great economies and environments for startups, so we can compare where is the better place to start your startup, or not like what is better, but which place is better for your startup. So yeah, this is what I want to talk about today.
Yeah, Artem, that's interesting because I know you lived and worked in Eastern Europe, and then you live and work in Western Europe, in the heart of Europe, and you worked in Silicon Valley, so you kind of have first-hand information from different parts of the world. Artem, we hear this term ecosystem. So I know, there's an ecosystem like in the ocean for fish. It's like a biological sort of biological term. So now we use this. There's there's ecosystem for startups, and this ecosystem, as I understand, it's not the same. So what is startup ecosystem, and from the first glance, what is the difference between business ecosystem in the European Union and in the United States?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. So yeah, that's true. I was born and grown up in Ukraine, but then I started to travel a lot. So I traveled all around Europe. So I lived and worked in many countries, mostly Netherlands, Germany, France, a bit of Hungary, latest year. Then, of course, I've traveled a lot in the United States, and we have presented our startup there like 7 years ago. And after that, I travel to the United States every year. In the last 3 months, as you know, I have spent in the Silicon Valley again. So yeah, now I can compare it. And as we worked with different customers from different countries, we really understand how every ecosystem works. But yeah, coming back to the ecosystems, what represent this ecosystem? First of all, the economies, and why it's really reasonable to compare the US economy and European Union economy, because it will not be correctly to compare, for example, United States and Germany. Even if Germany is the most powerful European economy, it's not comparable because it's just a different scales, So it's more reasonable to compare the United States and the European Union. It will be a more precise comparison. And first of all, it's economy. So ecosystem and economy is very connected, as economy is just like a pool for all startups that will be working in these pools, like a fish, in some space. To grow, you should have a space to grow. At a plant, also, you need to have a pot for the plant. So as big as a pot, as bigger the plant can grow. Yeah. The second, of course, it's currencies, countries or states, languages. So many parameters. So today we can compare these parameters. For example, also it's very important. So the economy representing the potential of every startups, it's just determine the size of the markets. And then of course it's population. And then of course it's how many companies, employees, venture capital funds, and the amount of money that's in this industry. So all these represents these ecosystems, and that's how we compare these two ecosystems.
Well, I understand there are many. Thank you. There are many parameters, and different. As I understand, different culture. So, as far as I understand, so this ecosystem involves, startups, but also investors and also mentors and advisors. So it seems so this. If you compare European and American ecosystems, they're a little bit different. Artem, you see, but not everyone traveled many times to Europe and the United States and back. So could you please describe us in several words, like American, like this atmosphere of entrepreneurs and American ecosystem and European, and by American we usually mean Silicon Valley, but when we speak about European ecosystem, it seems it's kind of a little bit diversified. It's like a Berlin and Paris and London. Yeah, so could you please describe us like the way you feel in Silicon, what is the difference in the way you feel in Silicon Valley and in Berlin?
Yeah. First of all, I cannot say it's United States. Is only about Silicon Valley. But before we will continue, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, as this is how we can, share these beautiful podcasts. So, and coming back to the topic. So, in the United States, I should say there are like several centers, and now we will talk about the centers of influence. In Europe, it somehow also could be described in the same way. So first of all, Silicon Valley is like a tech capital of the United States, and not only capital, it's like an important resource. It's also talents and this entrepreneurship culture and environment, because not every city in the United States has the same, vibe and culture that's good for specifically for innovations. So I should say that Silicon Valley not only a heart of startups because of the tech, but also because of the innovations. So it's like one of the best places for innovations. And there are a lot of many things that was in the history happened in the ways this ecosystem was established. For example, not so many people know that in California, and specifically in Silicon Valley, it was a headquarter of, maybe even now, I'm not sure, the headquarter of the biggest fleet in the world. It was the base of Pacific Ocean Fleet of the United States. And so it was a really huge military center of the entire fleet that was about 2 million people in service. After that, it also have a lot of very high-tech companies like Lockheed Martin that produces the best airplanes and military equipment. So, and all these electronics companies, it's Fairchild Semiconductor and all other silicon, microchips companies also was on the top of this military industry. So of course they consume and utilize a lot of electronics, so that's why a lot of companies were there. And on top of it, then such companies like IBM and Apple and all other that consume electronics was also happened there. And not only them, but this is like most popular or known. And of course, then Microsoft, but Microsoft headquartered not in the Silicon Valley, it's in Seattle, and Amazon as well in Seattle. So West Coast is represented by not only by Silicon Valley, but also Seattle. But don't forget about Los Angeles, and it's also very important for the show business, for the movie industry. All this Disney and Pixar and Star Wars and Marvel, so they all mostly concentrated there. And so it is West Coast, but on the East Coast, it's also New York is the financial center of the US, and Boston and Massachusetts. It's one of the most important. There are Harvard, there are MIT. It's very important. Also a tech center and science center of the United States. Of course, in Silicon Valley, it's mostly Stanford and Berkeley and Caltech. On the East Coast, it's Boston, it's MIT, it's Harvard, it's also Princeton, it's Yale, it's a lot of other great universities and scientific centers. And of course, New York is the financial center and Wall Street. So it's a world financial center, one of the the best in finance. And but also Washington, there are also some tech companies, but it's mostly a political center. Then Philadelphia, then Denver, the headquarters for all startups because of the legislation and all this stripe and everything. And of course, Florida is also a great center. But again, Texas and Austin at the center of aerospace industry. So if you are talking about the United States, it's very diverse, and every big city has its own unique feature, and that's why it's different. So depending of what kind of startup do you want to build, you probably have to choose the state where you have the best environment specifically for your startup. And and we can say the same about Europe, but probably you wanted to comment something.
Well, thank you. It's very, it's interesting because, people usually think, okay, they think startup, and usually it is associated with people associated with Silicon Valley, but there are some. It's a little bit more diverse. It's also understand that there are different. There are some major areas in which startups work, maybe like artificial intelligence and this biotech. And as far understood from your words, so maybe there are some sort of clusters of startups, and they kind of group together. So startups that work in the same sort of the same area, they group together. Again speaking, because I know you personally met some people who run startups. So what are the sort of hottest directions of for startups now in maybe in Silicon Valley and in Berlin, maybe some other places? Artificial intelligence, biotech. What are the hottest directions right now?
Yeah, first of all, I recommend to watch our previous episodes with you, Alex, and with other our guests, because we talked about hottest areas mostly, and of course we will continue to talk about it as well in the future. But I'm sure that this comparison will not be complete if you will not say about European Union as well. So I'm totally agree that in the modern world, when science became more complicated, when startups became more complicated, in some way it's becoming more like easier to start something because we have so many technologies and frameworks and platforms. But in the same way, to create something really innovative became even harder because you should have even more resources and more talents. And this clusterization is mostly important because of the talents. So every area, like, okay, New York is attracting more people in finance industry, Hollywood attracting people in movie industry, actors and producers and writers and musicians. So, and yeah, a lot of talents like this. Silicon Valley attracts mostly engineers, software, hardware. Texas attracting aerospace engineers and all these people. So every area, have its own like cluster feature. And you're true. And in Europe, we have something like that. But as in Europe, we have a different history of creating all the environment, and very ancient history sometimes. Then this clusterization. So it seems like every country tried to have everything, but comparing to the US, and this is the start of this conversation and discussion about differences. So as every country in Europe was trying to be the best in everything, and in some history moment, it was very good driver for innovations, because in Britain and France and Germany and Italy and Spain and Portugal and Netherlands and Scandinavian countries were competing in technologies in all these different innovations, and that's what was the biggest drivers of all these processes. But then United States in a scale became a really good competitor, and now even the best European economy couldn't compete with such a big scale, and this is where these differences became even bigger. But let's come back to the Europe. So Europe also has this clusterization right now, but it seems like now Europe in the process of transforming. So when European Union start to unite again after the Second World War, mostly, when the currency became uniting, so now euro is used in France and Germany, in Italy, in Spain, and a lot of other countries. But some countries still have their own currency, and they have like double currency. Britain still have their own currency, British pounds. So yeah, this already I started talking about differences. But okay, so in Europe we also have London as a financial center, and also a tech center and science center, but also Berlin is very good in tech, but also in tech probably Switzerland is also great in tech, and Scandinavian countries. So it seems like this clusterization in Europe not so obvious. Now Lisbon is trying to become a center for entrepreneurs, as the climate is good there, and now a lot of events are happening there, but still the economy is not so strong, environment maybe not so, I don't know, I don't want to judge, but it's like comparing to the California, of course, it's not a very proper comparison of California and Portugal, for example. But climate is the same. It seems like places very similar, but it's different. So what else? Yeah, Paris is also, in France, maybe like Cannes is like a good place for film, for movie industry. Milan is good for fashion, and Paris. Then, yeah, London is also great as entertainment, for entertainment, and all this music industry. So yeah, every country has their own unique things as well. But probably in Europe, it's even more diverse. You know, it seems like this clusterization is still in the process. You know, and some countries are still looking for the best niche for themselves. But in some way, United States and Europe is competing. Somewhere it's cooperating, but it's nice because it's also could bring some competition. For example, Boeing and Airbus, yeah, then NASA and ESA, yeah, European Space Agency. So like, so it could be a very good things. It could be also balancing some industries. And for startups, it's also an opportunities. So this is where we can have some similarities in these two ecosystems. Probably it's not a complete description, but at least we will have this understanding of what is ecosystems and what can characterize these ecosystems.
Wow, thank you, Artem. It sounds so exciting. I want to launch my startup, but I haven't decided. Maybe in Europe. Yeah, there are. Sounds like there are advantages and disadvantages. Like Silicon Valley in comparison with Europe. You see, but there's a question that is bothering me. You see, like, for example, when a child is born, usually a child has parents, because when a child is small, so the child needs some sort of, a little bit like protection and some resources, and then the child becomes stronger and becomes, and then the child becomes independent and starts launching startups. Yeah. So the question is, yeah, but who are parents for a startup? So do governments in the United States and Europe sort of create like favorable conditions? Do they care about startups? Do they think that, I mean, maybe they're busy with other things. Do they think that startups are useful for the economy? Yeah, this is, and the second part of the question, so you see, some people have very good ideas, but they need resources, some funding to put those ideas into practice. Is it easier to get funding in the United States, or, I mean, it's difficult to generalize, but if we can, is it easier to get funding in the United States or in Europe? And the third part of the question is regulations. Are the regulations more favorable in the United States or in Europe? Yeah, so basically there are two. Are the regulations more favorable in the United States or in Europe? And where is it easier to get funding for a startup from your own experience?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. So, in Silicon Valley, I've met a guy, Marco. He is from Italy, and he's working as analyst in Italian Association of Business Angels. And this is exactly what we were talking about and discussing this difference in different ecosystem. And this is where this difference began to grow. So comparing to this startup in United States and in Europe, let's take Italy as an example. This pre-seed investments usually is the same, but if you will compare the United States and Italy, its scale totally different. It's like 10 times different, maybe even more. So it's not a good comparison, but in some way you should invest the same amount of money, like 500,000, $500,000 and €500,000. But in the United States, you have a total economy like, I will tell you, I have a data for
$26 trillion GDP.
Yeah, it is for 2022, right? Okay, I have a data for 2021. It was almost 23 trillion, and in Italy, it's just a moment. Italy GDP, it's only 2 trillion, so it's 10 times less. But of course, for Europe, it's about 20 trillion. So if you will talk about European Union market and United States market, it could be quite comparable. But in Europe, it doesn't work this way. So if you start in Italy, you probably will work mostly in Italy, and there are a lot of reasons. And the first reason is language and the culture. So comparing to the United States, where one official language English, in Europe we have 24 official languages. And if in the United States we have one currency, US dollar, in Europe we have 19 currencies, euro and many others. So, for example, in Italy it's euro, but in other countries it could be different currencies. And this is where the most of problems appear if you are starting startup in Europe. It doesn't mean you shouldn't start in Europe to build startup. Sometimes it could be a really good niche market for you to start, but later you probably will have these scaling issues because of these parameters, first of all.
Yeah, thank you. Personally, for me, it is very useful information. So the American market is bigger, but also it's easier with the language, and it's easier with the currency.
Yeah.
Maybe there are some advantages for like in the European market, but those two are two obvious advantages. And
sorry for interrupting. The advantage of the European market is there are like more niches. So for example, it's just harder to cover all the niches in the same time. So for somebody, it could be a really good starting point. And probably, for example, if you know, Hungarian language, it's really hard to learn Hungarian. So probably some people just don't want to go to Hungary at first because it's just not their native language. But those who are working there, they could use this as advantage, and this market could be a starting point for them. But of course, later you probably will have to compete with other players from different countries, and this is where this advantage became disadvantage. So when you are small, it could be your advantage. When you became big, it could become your disadvantage.
Yeah, like Americans say, big is not always beautiful.
Yeah.
Artem, I'm not sure that you are familiar with this idea, but let me ask you this. So I came across on the internet. I came across this idea that for European it seems like for European startups, like profit or revenue is like first priority. But in general, American startups have a little bit different strategy. Their first priority is a growth rate. So they make some money and reinvest back in the startup. So they want to get bigger as fast as possible. But for European startups, it's like it's important that startup is profitable. Have you heard of this difference in strategy, and why? Why do they have different strategies?
Now I should say that in US this attitude is changing a bit. So, for example, all the story with Twitter. They already have been big, but still they weren't very profitable. But Facebook was profitable. Of course, they also started to grow at first, and only then became profitable, like in Google. But why this attitude is at least was or like worked in the US, because of the scale of the market. So if you grow fast, it means that you have this potential to cover all these big markets at once. Because in the United States, I should say, not every company were successful in scaling at least to the whole United States. There are a lot of niche restaurant networks and some networks in retail that still became very geographically separated or located. So, for example, Chick-fil-A or In-N-Out in California, but you cannot find no, Chick-fil-A is not in California, in other states, but I mean, you can find something in one state and you will not find it in another. But if you are growing fast, that means that you have this potential to become like nationwide corporation, and it's just a signal for investors that it has this potential. But now this attitude is changing a bit as profitability after the pandemic became the most important again. And even if you can grow fast, sometimes it doesn't mean investors just now don't want to have these high risks. In Europe, probably it's different attitude, as I mentioned. To grow in Europe fast and everywhere, it's just very hard. That's why companies in Europe mostly oriented on profit, because that's how you can then use this profit to grow to other markets. And yeah, in some way, it's also great. It just means the environment in the United States was more risky, but it can bring you more, like in a bigger scale, more profit in the future. That's why we see industry in the United States probably even more mature, I should say. And if you compare the numbers, VC funds in the United States for 2021 is about 156 billion. In Europe, it's 103 billion. So like 50 billion, 53 billion more than in Europe. So yeah, it could be just a difference in these two markets or these two ecosystems.
Well, thank you, Artem. And you see, so some people have brilliant ideas that can improve productivity of billions of people in the world. But usually, to implement those ideas, they need a team of talented people. And there are a lot of talented people in the United States and in Europe. Yeah, do we have some kind of indicators how easy or hard to hire talented people in because we know that the United States, made some smart steps, and the United States has been attracting talented people from all over the world for many decades. So can we compare how is it easy to hire talented people in the United States and in Europe?
Yes, attracting talents is very vital for startups, and I should say that it's one of the most important environmental indicator for talents is universities, as universities are producing this, or okay, not producing, mothers and fathers are producing talents, but this is where these talents are educated and became more mature, and then they probably switch to startups. And universities attracting these talents is an educational environment and community and some networking environment. So, and as you can see, mostly all these startup ecosystems are gathering around these universities, or many universities, I should say, or many best universities. So, if we will talk in that way, then of course in the United States, it's Stanford, Harvard, Berkeley, Yale. In Europe, it's mostly Oxford. Yeah, in Germany, also great universities. In France, like Sorbonne, and what else? So yeah, but again, yeah, language is also important. So, for example, in England, of course, it will be English. In France, it's probably French. But yes, in some universities, they can have many languages and English as well. In Germany, it will be German, and in Switzerland, it probably could be different language. They also have nice universities. So this is how this environment's different. And of course, some people will be selecting with their personal interests, and these interests could be just different in different countries and places.
Thank you, Artem. And maybe we touched this area before. So what are the major directions or fields that are interesting for startups? So we know like artificial intelligence, maybe knowledge management, biotech. From your personal interactions and conversations with people who run startups, what are the hottest directions for startups, and what are the cultural differences between people who work in startups in the United States and in Europe?
Yeah, this is really nice question. This is where mentality plays this biggest role, and because of it, Europe and United States have this big difference, I should say. For example, in United States, society was created on the top of different values comparing to the Europe. So now it seems like Europe became more similar in adopting some new modern values, and that's why it's became more similar to the United States, because there's diversity and tolerance and this union in economics. And so now in European Union, the establishment start to understand this, that language and currency and all this unification and unions, they bring some advantages in competition on the bigger world scale. And because of it, United States more mature as they have this advancement, and because of it, as just different history and cultural specifics, United States became more oriented on efficiency. So American culture, so they probably will not talk a lot about, religion, language, some traditions, because there are so many people from different cultures and that they can speak different languages, pray to different gods or don't pray at all. It's a personal decision of every person. But in the United States, they mostly united by the law and economy as some common sense. I don't say intentionally about values, because sometimes maybe just a tool for people, but this is something that can have common sense when you negotiating or something. So at least with money, it's very easy to calculate the success, and law is the principle how we will manage when we have so different views on even some moral questions, because in different cultures it would be different. That's why law and currency became like the main value and the basement of the American society. In Europe, it's very different. As you know, we have even more diversity in languages. So in some way, the diversity in the United States is also could be even bigger than in Europe, but Europe is more, how to say it? So if in the United States, it's like a big melting pot when all these people in one big environment and they mix all the time. In Europe, as we have culturally and historically and in many ways these separate countries, of course, we have this very specific cultural diversity. It's not bad, it's just how it is. because of it, these differences play their roles in these ecosystems. So yeah, we just have to understand it, and that's how we can deal with it.
Wow, thank you, Artem. So it seems, for startups, so the markets, so these two markets are a little bit different, because in the United States is one language, and there is a people from different countries and from different cultures, but they all mix together. Yeah, but in Europe, it's each nation has its territory and its language, and they are gradually mixing together a little, but not so fast. Yeah, so the markets, and when people develop products, so they develop products for the clients. So the markets, so these two markets are not the same. And so one more question is, launching a startup is a little bit of taking risks. Sometimes people invest their own money that they saved, and they even borrow money from their relatives. So launching, so people believe in the idea, but it is a little bit about taking risk. So can we compare these two, startup ecosystems from the point of view of taking risks? But also have like a second question to give you more space. So you see, usually it became common. So we assess people's success. We measure people's success by the amount of money they make. But sometimes, as far as we kind of have a little bit information from different sources, so sometimes people make really good money, but they are not really happy, because maybe they have to work really hard, and they use all the resources of their body. So they they make this good money, but they exhaust. They don't have free time to enjoy life, and they exhaust resources of their body. So they make this money, but then they're so tired that they cannot enjoy their success. So could you compare these two ecosystems from the point of view of risk taking, and also a level of happiness? Are people in general happier in Silicon Valley or in Berlin?
Okay, risks. Risks. What is risks? What is the definition of risk?
Yeah, it's like risk of failure, of losing the investment.
If we will take a classical risk management, what is risk? Risk is probability multiplied to losses that could be caused by this event.
Probability multiplied by losses. Yes.
Exactly. So when we talk about risks, then risk in Europe could be less. I mean, like, the probability probably will be the same, but the risks maybe in Europe is, okay. If, for example, we have a startup, this pre-seed round, so investors are investing the same amount of money, like, okay, $500,000 or $1 million. And in this case, probably some risk could be lower in the United States, as it's like more homogeneous market, and the scale is bigger. So in Europe, you probably need to spend even more efforts to gain the same result. So in this way, for investors, risks in United States are less than in Europe, but it's only when we take the probability of creating some innovation in some economics. But if you will take the competition in the United States is higher, and this could be another kind of risk. So, and I should say that yes. So for in every area, in every niche, it seems like more brands try to to compete because the potential benefit is really high. So competing in some specific niche in Europe would be like less. So again, it just characterizes these two ecosystems in a different way. Yeah. The second part is work-life balance. And I should say that in Europe, I find the work-life balance better. So for the same amount of money, you will probably have better quality of life in Europe. Again, it could be maybe because I was grown up and lived more time in Europe than in the US. So in some way, but many Americans say the same, and a lot of Americans really like to travel on vacation to Europe or somewhere to Asia. But a lot of Americans like to go to Europe, to Paris, to Rome, to London, to different nice places in Europe. And they feel Europe very well because, for the same money, they can have here a really good service and quality. And yes, I can say that, for example, here in Germany or somewhere in Italy or in France, work-life balance is better because, maybe it's not so good for the economy in some moments. For example, if you cannot buy some products on weekend, food, or probably you want to go to some restaurant and it doesn't work. It's not like great sometimes. And in the United States, for example, it will be open like maybe every day and 24 hours. Not everywhere, but in general, it's like, but it's also this work-life balance. So sometimes it's bad for the consumers, but it's great for those people who work in these companies because they will have more holidays and they will just rest better and spend more time with the families or loved ones, with the friends. And this is also a difference. So I should say in general, and especially in Silicon Valley, people are very hardworking, so they can work like for very
12 hours, 14 hours.
More than traditional normal working day. And I cannot say it's like normal, but it's very often like this, especially if you work on startup. So what was the last question?
Yeah, so the last question, the question is how to run. You see, so most as from our observation, many people have this mentality. So I will launch my startup and I will become a millionaire. And then when I am 65, I will be a millionaire and I will enjoy my life. Sometimes they achieve it, sometimes not. How to run a successful startup and be happy at the same time. That was the question.
Very interesting question. I should say that startups not about the guarantees that everything will be perfect and you will get rich soon. Sometimes people can spend all their life, and no, of course when you're focused and working on the same thing or very similar things all your life, you probably will become one of the best, and it's for sure. But it doesn't guarantee that you will become very rich just because you want it. It just says about motivation. But I'm sure that startups is mostly about your lifestyle. So there are some people they just cannot do in other way. They already been employees and they just don't like this way of life, and that's why they start startups, because they see this opportunity and they want to create something useful and great. So it's more about lifestyle, and this is work-life balance is also very important, because it's also about lifestyle. Yeah, work-life balance. It's also about lifestyle. Just a moment.
Have you got have you got
Yeah.
have you got I thought you got some comments from the viewers.
Yes. It's our audience came and now will be cheering up. Okay, so yeah, as I mentioned, the most important is it's mostly about lifestyle, and of course, when you enjoy your lifestyle, so when you really like and passionate about your idea, and if you're smart enough and you have this opportunity, the market, so probably I mean, it's a high probability that someday you will become rich, but nobody can guarantee you. For example, there are sometimes some place like competition games, and I already experienced it before, and it's all the time happening something very interesting. So it's more about lifestyle.
Yes, Artem, that's a good point, because for some people, working working for a company, it could it could be stressful, because sometimes maybe if especially it's a talented person and they say that the boss gives me the tasks that are not the not the it's not the most effective way to get the result, and so I guess atmosphere at some companies can be a little bit toxic. So some people think I feel better investing in myself and taking this risk. I feel better than working in this matrix, like in English it's like little cog in this machine. Yeah, but Artem, from your own experience in the United States and Europe, which of these economies, of course we can look at statistics, which of these two economies is developing faster? And 99% of forecasts are not correct, but people like to hear forecasts. Yeah, so which of these economies is more dynamic? American economy or European economy? And what is your vision? What is going to happen in within the next like 5 years, 10 years? How will these two ecosystems will evolve?
For now, definitely, United States are the best in the world, the biggest, and okay, it's not a good way to say. Now it's the biggest, and the dynamics in the US is still the highest, and potential for the growth is still very big. The territory is big, the population is growing, so in general, United States very high and growing developing economy still nowadays. But another trend that I see in the US is this work-life balance became more important, as people don't want just to work, work, and work. They also want to spend quality time with friends and families. They want to go to, of course, they go to vacations, but it seems that they want to have more better just lifestyle in their neighborhoods, so. And somewhere in Silicon Valley you can see these nice neighborhoods and shopping malls and some places where you can spend time. But if you will take Europe, this work-life balance is more natural, and it's like people are living this way like for, I don't know, centuries. It's very common, to go to restaurant and spend your time with or cafe. So it seems like life in Europe is just different from the what we have right now. And it seems like people in Europe have this better work-life balance, but still the economy is not so fast growing. And in some countries, you just don't have the potential to grow it even higher, because it just takes too much resources to upgrade everything in the same time. And that's why, in some way, Europe, the biggest driver of Europe became the Eastern European countries, and maybe in the future it's also South European countries, because the density of population in Western Europe is already very high, and it seems like it's just not enough space to grow, to innovate. That's why Poland and Baltic states and Romania and Bulgaria. So now this is like the biggest point of and of course Ukraine, but Ukraine is not in the European Union. But I hope one day it will become, and this is where this potential start to evolve even bigger. And Ukraine is also very big for population and very it's a really great economy and have a really high potential, like 10 times for growing. So economy of Ukraine for sure can grow from 200 billions to 1 trillion easily. Yeah, of course we have the war right now and some demographic issues, but I'm sure that if it will be a peaceful time, then we have a really big potential for growth. And this is how European economy will be growing as well. So, but it's like a political issue as well. But Eastern Europe in general became now the driver of the economy for the whole Europe. Of course, these lifestyle issues, I think they also will be some way, but I'm sure it's just a matter of little time. I'm sure that the Ukrainians also will enjoy nice lifestyle very quickly. It's not a problem, it's just a matter of time in the economy. So so this is how we compare, and also I believe that European economy will be also growing. First of all, because of the growing economies of the Eastern European countries, and because I believe somehow European Union will be uniting even more, because it's just reasonable. Of course.
It's logical. It makes sense.
It just
they're going to be more integrated.
It's more a political question and cultural question, how not to to lose this identity of every nations. And for me, I don't see a lot of conflicts in it, because it's very good conception when you are like a boy and a teenager, you, for example, French or German or Ukrainian or Lithuanian, but when you grow up, you became not like a substitution, but also like addition. You also became European. And this is where you start studying university, for example. And this is where people start uniting on a higher level. And this is when people start to travel. You can go to any university in Europe, you can study them, but then you can come back into your country and create business and grow your business. And this is how, in the same time, you're still Ukrainian, but also European, and there are no conflict at all. It's like in the United States, when every state have their own uniqueness and laws and cultural things. And it's like, okay, I'm from New York State, and like one guy is from New York State, another one from Colorado, another from Illinois, another from California, but they are all American citizens. And it's like it could be a very similar thing in Europe as well. And it doesn't mean that we have to lose our identity. It means that we can unite on some higher level and higher values that do not contradict each other. So this is my vision.
Yeah, yes, Artem, I enjoyed, and I was fascinated, listening to your vision, because not only that you run a successful startup, and I like using your products. Yeah, but also you have a lot of cultural experience, and I'm sure the viewers enjoyed listening and getting this like first-hand information from you about this, two markets, and what is a better place to develop their startup.
Thank you, Alex. It's also always a pleasure to talk with you. You always bring a lot of and wonderful questions, and yeah, it's a very exciting conversation all the time. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm sure the viewers liked your ideas and a lot. People who run startups. I think that's very valuable information. Artem, it has been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, thank you, Alex, so much for having us again. Yeah, and don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share with your friends. This is how they will learn so much valuable information.
It's nice to have you back in Europe.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. I also glad to come back.
Yes, Artem, have a nice weekend, and I'm looking forward to your next show.
Okay, thank you. Have a nice weekend too.